clumsy fool. Eleanor Vance grabbed Jasmine's uniform collar and tore it open. This costs more than you're worth. Jasmine stumbled backward, the black fabric ripping down her shoulder and exposing smooth, dark skin underneath. Eleanor's platinum bracelet caught the chandelier light as she shoved harder, sending Jasmine crashing into the champagne table. Crystal exploded. Expensive wine pulled crimson across white marble. Jasmine lay sprawled among the wreckage, uniform torn and disheveled, shoulder exposed to every recording phone in the Beverly Hills ballroom. Eleanor stood over her, Chanel dress wine-stained but triumphant. $8,000 ruined by the hired help. The crowd pressed closer. Cameras flashed. Someone started live streaming. Jasmine didn't scream, didn't cry, just stared up with eyes that held secrets Eleanor couldn't imagine. Have you ever watched someone reveal their true nature when they believed no one could stop them? The live stream counter climbed. 31,000 viewers and rising. Jasmine pushed herself up from the champagne-soaked marble, torn uniform hanging loose around her shoulder. Glass crunched under her palms. The ballroom's crystal chandeliers cast harsh shadows across her exposed skin as she reached for the tablecloth to cover herself. "Don't you dare!" Eleanor's voice cut through the murmur of excited whispers. "You destroyed an $8,000 Chanel dress. Do you people have any idea what that costs?" The crowd pressed closer, forming a tight circle around the wreckage. Designer gowns rustled. Jewelry sparkled under phone camera flashes. Jasmine could smell expensive perfume mixing with spilled wine. "More than you make in 6 months as hired help," Eleanor continued, her voice rising with each word. "This is exactly why I told Elite Catering not to hire these people for civilized events." A woman in pearls tittered behind her hand. Eleanor is absolutely right. Standards have really dropped. Jasmine kept her eyes down, focusing on gathering the larger glass shards. Her movements were careful, deliberate, professional. She'd cleaned up messes before, just never her own humiliation. Eleanor circled her like a predator. "Look at this mess. Red wine on white marble. Do you know how much this floor costs per square foot? Of course you don't. People like you rent apartments smaller than my closet." The digital wall display showed 9:30 p.m. in elegant script. VIP donor presentations began at 10:30, 1 hour remaining. Jasmine's phone buzzed against her hip. 3 missed calls from David, CEO. She let it ring. "Ma'am." A security guard approached, his black suit crisp despite the chaos. "Should we have her removed?" "Not yet." Eleanor's smile was sharp as crystal. "I want everyone to see this, to understand what happens when you hire unvetted help." The catering supervisor appeared, wringing her hands. "Mrs. Vance, I'm so sorry. Jasmine's normally very careful." "Jasmine," Eleanor's eyebrows rose. "You're on a first-name basis with the help. How quaint." She turned back to Jasmine, who was still kneeling among the glass. "Stand up when I'm talking to you." Jasmine rose slowly, the torn fabric falling away from her shoulder again. She pulled it back into place with a quiet dignity that somehow made the room's laughter die in their throats. "You ruined my dress," Eleanor said. "My evening, my charity event. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" "I apologize for the accident, Mrs. Vance." Jasmine's voice was steady, educated, too educated for a server if anyone had been paying attention. "I'll file a report with my insurance company to cover the damages." Several guests exchanged glances. "Insurance for a maid?" Eleanor's laugh was sharp. "Insurance? Darling, you probably don't even have health insurance." "This dress costs more than your car, more than everything you own combined." Jasmine reached into her uniform pocket and pulled out her phone. The case was custom leather, expensive leather, if anyone had looked closely. Her wedding ring caught the light as she scrolled through her contacts. I understand you're upset, Jasmine said calmly. Perhaps we should handle this through proper channels. Proper channels? Eleanor's voice cracked like a whip. The proper channel is you groveling for forgiveness and your company paying every penny of damages, plus pain and suffering, plus the cost of this entire event being ruined. The live stream comments were flowing fast. Schwach toward Team Eleanor, gonna make her pay, to rich lady protecting her investment. That maid is way too calm, suspicious. Why does she talk like that? Weird for hired help. But most comments supported Eleanor. The viewer count hit 45,000. A young socialite held up her phone. Should I call the police? She technically assaulted Mrs. Vance by throwing wine at her. It was an accident, Jasmine began. Was it? Eleanor stepped closer, forcing Jasmine back against the destroyed table. You people always have excuses, always victims. Never take responsibility for your actions. Jasmine's phone buzzed again. This time a text message. She glanced at it briefly, and for just a moment something flickered across her face. Not fear, not anger, something else entirely. She typed a quick response. Honey, the test is complete. Eleanor Vance failed spectacularly. Execute Protocol Alpha. No one saw the message except the front row viewers of the Beverly Hills Secrets livestream who caught a glimpse of the screen, but they were too busy commenting about Eleanor's righteous anger to read carefully. I've seen this before, Eleanor announced to her audience. They come into our world, pretend to belong, then blame us when they can't keep up. This is why I support workfare instead of welfare. Real consequences for real failures. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Phones continued recording. The view count approached 50,000. Jasmine stood perfectly still in her torn uniform, surrounded by Beverly Hills's most powerful women, all of them believing they were witnessing justice. Her posture remained straight despite the humiliation. Her breathing was steady despite the accusations. What none of them noticed was the quality of her silence. The kind of silence that came from someone who'd been in boardrooms, not just service kitchens. Someone who knew exactly how to wait for the right moment. Someone who was gathering evidence. Well, Eleanor demanded, are you going to clean this mess or just stand there looking pathetic? Jasmine bent to collect more glass. As she moved, her phone slipped partially from her pocket, revealing just the edge of something that shouldn't belong to a minimum wage worker. A Black American Express Centurion card. But in the excitement and chaos, only the closest cameras caught it, and those recordings were too focused on the drama to notice details that would matter later. That's right, Eleanor said with satisfaction. Clean up your mess. Maybe next time you'll be more careful around your betters. The wall clock ticked toward 9:45 p.m. 15 minutes had passed since the initial incident. The crowd was fully engaged, phones recording every angle, social media buzzing with righteous indignation on Eleanor's behalf. None of them realized they were about to witness the most expensive character test in Beverly Hills history. Jasmine's phone buzzed one final time. She read the message and allowed herself the smallest smile, the kind that never reached her eyes, but somehow changed everything about her presence in the room. The real show was about to begin. 9:45 p.m., 45 minutes until VIP presentations. The security chief appeared through the crowd, his earpiece crackling with static. Mrs. Vance, we've assessed the situation. Should we escort this individual off the premises? Eleanor's eyes gleamed. Not just yet, Robert. I want to make sure she understands the full consequences of her actions first. Jasmine had finished collecting the larger glass shards, her movements methodical despite the torn uniform that kept slipping off her shoulder. Every time she adjusted the fabric, cameras caught the motion. The live stream comments grew more vicious. Stop being dramatic and fix your clothes. Acting like a victim when she caused this. Eleanor should sue for everything she's got. The viewer count hit 67,000 across multiple streams. Stand up, Eleanor commanded. Face me properly when I'm addressing you." Jasmine rose, pulling the torn fabric back into place. For a moment, she stood with perfect posture, the kind taught in finishing schools, not hospitality training. Several guests noticed the contradiction, but dismissed it as defiance. "You think you're special, don't you?" Eleanor circled her again, designer heels clicking against marble. "Coming into my home, my event, acting like you belong here, like you're equal to us." "I'm just trying to do my job, Mrs. Vance." "Your job." Eleanor laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut crystal. "Your job is to serve, to be invisible, to know your place." She gestured at the stained Chanel. "This is what happens when people like you forget where you belong." The catering supervisor approached nervously. "Mrs. Vance, perhaps Jasmine should change into a backup uniform." "Absolutely not," Eleanor's voice carried across the ballroom. "I want everyone to see exactly what she's done, what she is." She turned back to Jasmine. "You're going to finish this event exactly as you are, a walking reminder of your failure." Jasmine's phone buzzed. Another text. She glanced at it. "Standing by. Give the signal when ready." "D," she typed back quickly. "Almost time. She's about to escalate further." "Stay ready." The exchange took 3 seconds. None of the recording phones caught the message content clearly. "Are you texting?" Eleanor's voice rose dangerously. "During my event, while being disciplined for destroying my property?" "I was checking for emergency contact information for my insurance." "Insurance?" Eleanor threw her head back and laughed. "You keep mentioning this insurance like it means something. Like you actually have coverage worth $8,000. She stepped closer, invading Jasmine's personal space. "Let me explain reality to you, little girl. You don't have real insurance. You don't have real money. You don't have anything real." The crowd murmured agreement. Someone called out, "Tell her, Eleanor." "You know what you have?" Eleanor continued, her voice growing louder. "You have debt. You have problems. You have a minimum wage job that you're about to lose." She smiled coldly. "And now you have a lawsuit coming that will follow you for the rest of your pathetic life." Jasmine remained silent, but something shifted in her stance. She stopped trying to cover the torn uniform, stopped looking down. Instead, she met Eleanor's gaze directly, and for the first time since the incident began, she spoke with complete clarity. "Mrs. Vance, I want to be absolutely certain I understand your position. You're saying that I personally am responsible for damages to your dress, your floor, your event, and your evening, and you intend to pursue full legal action against me for these damages. Is that correct?" The precision of her language caught several people off guard. The catering supervisor blinked in surprise. A few socialites exchanged glances. Eleanor, however, was too angry to notice. "Finally, she gets it. Yes, you're responsible for everything. Every penny of damage, every moment of embarrassment, every single consequence of your clumsiness and incompetence. And you want to make sure everyone sees this punishment. Everyone understands what happens to people like me when we forget our place." "Exactly." Eleanor's smile was triumphant. "This is a teachable moment for you, for everyone watching, for anyone who thinks they can come into my world." And she grabbed Jasmine's already torn uniform and yanked hard, ripping the fabric further down the front. The material gave way completely this time, leaving Jasmine's uniform hanging in tatters. The crowd gasped, cameras flashed frantically, the live-stream viewer count spiked past 80,000. "There," Eleanor said with satisfaction. "Now you look like what you really are. Broken, worthless, destroyed." But Jasmine didn't crumble, didn't cry, didn't even flinch. Instead, she smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it changed everything about her presence in the room. The kind of smile that belonged in boardrooms, not service kitchens, the kind of smile that suggested she knew something no one else did. "Thank you, Mrs. Vance," Jasmine said quietly. "That was exactly what I needed." Eleanor frowned. "What did you need? What are you talking about?" "I needed to be absolutely certain about your character, your values, your true nature when you think someone can't fight back." Jasmine's voice remained calm, professional. "You've provided more evidence than I could have hoped for." Several guests felt a chill they couldn't explain. Something was wrong with this picture, but they couldn't identify what. The security chief stepped forward. "Ma'am, should we call BHPD? We have assault and property damage here." "Yes," Eleanor said immediately. "Call them. I want her arrested and charged with everything possible." "Are you absolutely certain about that decision?" Jasmine asked. "Once law enforcement arrives, everything becomes official. Public record. No taking it back." "Of course I'm certain. You attacked me, destroyed my property, ruined my event. I spilled wine accidentally, and you physically assaulted me in response, twice, in front of 80,000 live stream viewers and counting." Jasmine's tone remained perfectly level. "But if you're certain you want to involve the police, that's your choice." Eleanor hesitated for just a moment. Something in Jasmine's confidence was unsettling, but the crowd was watching, the cameras were rolling, and backing down now would look weak. "Call the police," she ordered. The security chief spoke into his radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 7 at the Vance residence. We need officers for assault and property damage. 2 units should be sufficient." Jasmine's phone buzzed one final time. She read the message and nodded slightly. The text was simple. "Units en route. Legal team standing by. Press contacts alerted. Stock positions confirmed. Ready when you are." "Love you, David," Jasmine typed back. Perfect timing. She just escalated to police involvement. Full execution authorized. "See you in 10 minutes." She put her phone away and looked directly at Eleanor. "Mrs. Vance, I want to give you one final opportunity to reconsider your actions tonight. Are you absolutely, completely certain you want to proceed with legal action against me?" Eleanor's laugh was sharp with victory. "Are you actually trying to threaten me? You, standing there in rags, about to be arrested, trying to threaten me?" She turned to address the crowd. "Can you believe the audacity?" The socialites laughed on cue. The livestream comments exploded with support for Eleanor. The viewer count hit 95,000. "I'm not threatening you," Jasmine said calmly. "I'm offering you a chance to show mercy, to demonstrate that you're capable of human decency when given the opportunity." "Mercy," Eleanor's voice cracked like a whip. "You want mercy? You should have thought about that before you attacked me in my own home." "Very well." Jasmine straightened her shoulders, and despite the torn uniform, despite the humiliation, despite being surrounded by hostile witnesses, she somehow managed to look regal. "Then we proceed." Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The crowd pressed tighter, sensing the climax approaching. Phones recorded from every angle. Social media buzzed with anticipation. None of them realized they were about to witness the most expensive 10 minutes in Beverly Hills social history. Jasmine checked her phone one last time and smiled that same quiet smile. The real show was about to begin. 10 p.m., 30 minutes until VIP presentations. The police sirens grew louder, echoing off Beverly Hills' pristine streets. Eleanor stood triumphant, surrounded by her supporters, cameras capturing every angle of what they believed was justice being served. Jasmine's phone rang. She answered without hesitation, pressing the speaker so the entire ballroom could hear. "Hi, darling. How's your investigation going?" The voice was deep, authoritative, with the kind of confidence that came from boardrooms worth billions. The crowd fell silent, straining to hear. "Very thoroughly, honey," Jasmine replied, her torn uniform suddenly irrelevant. Mrs. Vance just tore my dress, physically assaulted me twice, and called the police to have me arrested for accidentally spilling wine. Eleanor's smile faltered. Something was wrong. The maid's entire demeanor had shifted. Her posture, her voice, her complete lack of fear. None of it fit. "Mrs. Vance?" the voice asked. "Eleanor Vance of Vance Enterprises?" "Yes," Eleanor snapped. "And who exactly are you to interrupt?" "I'm David Washington, CEO of Apex Global, and the woman you just assaulted is my wife, Dr. Jasmine Washington." The ballroom exploded into chaos. Phones frantically pulled up Google searches. The live stream comments went berserk. Eleanor's face drained of all color as the crowd around her began backing away. "David Washington? Apex Global?" Eleanor whispered, her voice barely audible over the sudden commotion. The search results flooded every screen in the room. David Washington, investment titan, worth $6.2 billion. Apex Global, largest private equity firm on the West Coast. David Washington, the quiet king of Beverly Hills development. "Wait," Eleanor stammered, looking at Jasmine with dawning horror. You can't be." "Dr. Jasmine Washington," Jasmine said calmly, removing her service apron entirely. "Stanford MBA, board member of 5 corporations, and yes, David Washington's wife." She looked directly into the nearest camera. "Tonight I was conducting a character assessment." The live stream viewer count exploded past 120,000. Comments flooded in faster than anyone could read. "Holy schwam. Garn sagt she's a billionaire's wife? Eleanor is toast?" This was a test. She was undercover. David's voice carried clearly through the speaker, addressing the entire room. "Eleanor, my wife has been investigating whether you possess the moral character worthy of Apex Global's partnership. We needed to understand how you treat people you perceive as powerless." Eleanor's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Around her, the socialites who had laughed and recorded began to realize the magnitude of what they'd witnessed and participated in. "The test was simple," Jasmine continued, her voice carrying the authority that had been hidden beneath the maid's uniform. "How do you treat people when you think they can't fight back? When you believe they're beneath you? When you assume they have no power to hold you accountable?" A woman in diamonds whispered, "Oh my God, we're all on camera." "You failed spectacularly," Jasmine said, looking directly at Eleanor in front of 120,000 live stream witnesses. "You revealed exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching." Eleanor's legs seemed to give out. She grabbed the edge of a nearby table for support. You were testing me? This was all planned?" "The spilled wine was an accident," Jasmine replied. "Your response was entirely your choice, and it told us everything we needed to know about your character." David's voice cut through the ballroom's stunned silence. "Eleanor, Apex Global was prepared to announce tonight a $1 billion investment in your Marina Bay Resort project. The contracts were ready for Monday's signing." The word billion hit the room like a physical blow. Eleanor's board members, who had been watching from the VIP section, pushed through the crowd with expressions of absolute panic. "Was?" Eleanor's voice cracked. "What do you mean, was?" David's response was delivered with the cold precision of a corporate execution. "I'm currently instructing our legal and finance teams to cancel the Marina Bay project. $1 billion in funding withdrawn, permanently. Additionally, we're calling in all existing bridge loans. $200 million due immediately." The live stream comments became a blur of shock and disbelief. The viewer count hit 140,000 as word spread across social media platforms. Eleanor's CFO materialized beside her, phone pressed to his ear, face ashen. "Eleanor," he whispered urgently, "our stock is crashing, down 38% in after-hours trading. The board is in an emergency session." "This can't be happening," Eleanor breathed. "This can't be real." Jasmine stepped closer, no longer hiding behind the facade of subservience. "Mrs. Vance, what you witnessed tonight was a planned character evaluation. We wanted to see how you treat people you believe are beneath your social status. The results speak for themselves." She gestured to the crowd of socialites, all of whom were now recording not in support of Eleanor, but in desperate attempts to distance themselves from the disaster. 140,000 people just watched you physically assault someone you thought was powerless. They watched you tear my clothes, push me down, and call for my arrest, all because I accidentally spilled wine on your dress. David's voice continued the corporate dismantling. "Eleanor, the character assessment clause in our partnership agreement clearly states that any potential partner demonstrating discriminatory behavior, physical assault, or systematic mistreatment of employees fails our moral standards and becomes permanently ineligible for Apex Global investment." Eleanor's personal attorney appeared, having rushed from the VIP section. He grabbed her arm, whispering frantically, "Eleanor, don't say another word. We need to discuss damage control immediately." But it was too late for damage control. The damage was done, recorded, and broadcast to 140,000 viewers who were sharing it across every social media platform imaginable. Jasmine looked around the ballroom, meeting the eyes of the women who had laughed at her humiliation 20 minutes earlier. "Ladies, what you participated in tonight was a live demonstration of how quickly social dynamics can change when hidden power structures are revealed." Her gaze returned to Eleanor, who stood frozen in the center of the wreckage, both literal and metaphorical. "You thought you were humiliating a powerless maid," Jasmine said quietly. "You discovered you were assaulting the wife of your largest potential investor in front of 140,000 witnesses." The police sirens were almost at the mansion now. Through the ballroom's massive windows, red and blue lights flickered against the palm trees. David's voice carried one final message. "The officers arriving will find a very different situation than the one you reported, Eleanor. I suggest you use the next few minutes to consider whether you want to continue pursuing legal action against my wife." Jasmine smiled that same quiet smile she'd worn when Eleanor first tore her uniform. "The choice is still yours, Mrs. Vance, but now you're making it with full knowledge of who I actually am." Eleanor stared at her, realization dawning like a nightmare. The maid was gone. In her place stood a woman who belonged in the boardrooms of the world's most powerful companies, a woman whose husband could destroy Vance Enterprises with a single phone call, a woman who had just spent 30 minutes collecting evidence of assault and discrimination in front of the largest live-stream audience in Beverly Hills history. The police cars pulled into the circular driveway, their lights painting the mansion in red and blue. The real consequences were about to begin. 10:05 p.m., 25 minutes until VIP presentations. The Beverly Hills police officers entered through the mansion's grand foyer, their radios crackling with dispatch updates. Two uniformed cops, expecting a simple assault case, walked into what looked like a corporate boardroom meeting that had exploded into chaos. David's voice continued to broadcast through Jasmine's phone speaker, addressing the 147,000 live stream viewers and the stunned ballroom audience with surgical precision. "For complete transparency, let me explain what Eleanor Vance just destroyed with her behavior tonight." Eleanor stood frozen, her wine-stained Chanel a stark contrast to her pale face. Her board members clustered around her like vultures, phones pressed to their ears, voices urgent and panicked. Apex Global was prepared to announce at tonight's VIP presentation our largest single real estate investment, the Marina Bay Luxury Resort Project, $1 billion in development funding, with contracts scheduled for execution Monday morning. The police officers paused, recognizing they'd walked into something far beyond a simple assault case. The lead officer, Sergeant Martinez, surveyed the crowd of recording phones and the obvious tension. Additionally, David continued, we currently hold $200 million in bridge financing for Vance Enterprises' existing projects, with standard acceleration clauses in the event of moral character violations. Eleanor's CFO grabbed her arm. Eleanor, the stock is in freefall. We're down 42%. The credit agencies are reviewing our rating. We need damage control now. Ma'am, Sergeant Martinez approached Eleanor. We received a report of assault and property damage. Can you explain the situation? Eleanor opened her mouth, but no words came. How could she explain that she'd called police to arrest a woman who turned out to be worth more than her entire company? Jasmine stepped forward, her torn uniform somehow irrelevant now that her true identity was revealed. Officer, I'm Dr. Jasmine Washington. Mrs. Vance physically assaulted me twice tonight after I accidentally spilled wine on her dress. The entire incident was recorded by multiple live streams and witnessed by over 100 guests. She gestured to the crowd of socialites, all of whom were now very quietly trying to delete their earlier supportive comments about Eleanor. Dr. Washington, Sergeant Martinez repeated, recognition dawning. You're David Washington's wife. I am. And Mrs. Vance was unaware of my identity when she chose to assault me. She believed I was hired help and acted accordingly. David's voice cut through the ballroom again. Officer, my wife was conducting a character assessment. Vance Enterprises was being evaluated for the largest investment in our company's history. Mrs. Vance's behavior tonight has provided all the evidence we need. Eleanor finally found her voice. This is entrapment. She was lying about who she was. I never lied, Jasmine replied calmly. I never claimed to be anyone other than Jasmine Washington. I was wearing a catering uniform provided by Elite Catering Services, whom we hired specifically for tonight's evaluation. Everything I did was legal and transparent. The second officer, Detective Carter, stepped forward. Mrs. Vance, what exactly did you want us to arrest Dr. Washington for? She threw wine at me, destroyed my dress, then refused to take responsibility. From the video evidence I'm seeing on social media, Detective Carter said carefully, checking his phone, it appears you physically grabbed and tore her clothing in response to what looks like an accidental spill. The live stream comments were flowing faster than anyone could read. The copyists watching, the live stream. Even police. Think Eleanor is wrong on your 148K witnesses versus one crazy rich lady. Jasmine held up her torn uniform. Officer, Mrs. Vance grabbed my collar and ripped it here. She pointed to the shoulder tier, then pushed me into the champagne table, then grabbed my uniform again and tore it further down the front when I tried to stand up. She showed her phone. I have time-stamped photos of each assault, along with audio recordings of Mrs. Vance's statements about these people and where we belong in society. Eleanor's personal attorney reappeared, having rushed from the VIP section. He grabbed her arm, whispering frantically, Eleanor, don't say another word. We need to discuss damage control immediately. But David's voice delivered the corporate death blow before damage control was possible. Officer, I want to be clear about the financial implications of tonight's character assessment. Apex Global is immediately implementing the following actions. The ballroom fell silent, except for the soft buzz of recording phones and police radios. 1. Cancellation of the Marina Bay Resort project. $1 billion in committed funding permanently withdrawn. Eleanor's knees buckled. Her attorney steadied her as the full weight of the announcement hit. Around the ballroom, socialites began whispering frantically to each other, realizing they'd just witnessed corporate suicide. 2. Acceleration of all existing bridge loans. $200 million due within 30 days, as permitted under the moral character clauses in our current agreements. Eleanor's CFO was frantically typing on his phone, probably trying to reach other investors, other sources of emergency funding that simply didn't exist at that scale. 3. Distribution of tonight's character assessment video to our investor network, which collectively manages over $47 billion in real estate investments. Detective Carter raised his eyebrows. $47 billion in real estate investments. Detective Carter raised his eyebrows. $47 billion? That's significant influence in this industry. 4. Immediate review of all Vance Enterprises partnerships within our investment network, with recommendations against future association based on tonight's moral character failure. Jasmine addressed the police officers directly. Gentlemen, Mrs. Vance called you here because she wanted me arrested for assault and property damage. I'm prepared to file countercharges for actual assault, discriminatory harassment, and destruction of property. My uniform, which was provided by Elite Catering at a cost of $85 and is now completely ruined. Sergeant Martinez looked between the two women, one in a torn catering uniform but speaking with corporate authority and absolute calm, the other in an $8,000 dress, looking like she was about to collapse from shock. Mrs. Vance, he said carefully, do you still wish to pursue assault charges against Dr. Washington? Eleanor's attorney whispered urgently in her ear, while her board members formed a tight circle, their phones creating a cacophony of emergency calls to investors, lawyers, and crisis management firms. David's voice provided the final ultimatum. Eleanor, you have exactly one path to avoid complete financial destruction. I'm offering you terms that expire when the officers leave this building. The ballroom held its collective breath. 148,000 live stream viewers waited. Even the police officers seemed riveted by the corporate drama unfolding. 1. Public apology to my wife, recorded and distributed across all social media platforms where tonight's incident was broadcast. Eleanor's hands shook visibly. 2. Personal compensation to Jasmine of $2 million, transferred within 24 hours as acknowledgement of assault and public humiliation. Her CFO closed his eyes in defeat, calculating numbers that clearly didn't work. 3. Donation of $10 million to organizations supporting workplace dignity and civil rights, specifically focusing on protection for service workers. The board members started arguing in hushed, frantic tones, probably debating whether the company could survive even compliance with the terms. 4. Complete restructuring of Vance Enterprises with external diversity oversight and mandatory character training for all executives, including annual re-evaluations. Eleanor's attorney was shaking his head, but the numbers were clear. Fighting would cost more than surrendering, and there was no guarantee of survival either way. 5. Resignation from day-to-day operations, with leadership transition to executives who can pass basic character assessments and rebuild company reputation. The terms hung in the air like a corporate execution order. The live stream viewer count hit 151,000 as word spread across social media platforms. Refuse these terms, David continued, with the finality of a judge pronouncing sentence. And by Monday morning, Vance Enterprises will face immediate bankruptcy from loan acceleration, complete investor flight, and federal legal action for assault and discrimination in a public accommodation. Jasmine added quietly, Mrs. Vance, you have 151,000 witnesses to your assault on someone you believed was powerless. That's not a civil matter anymore. That's a federal hate crime with video evidence. Detective Carter nodded grimly. Dr. Washington is correct. The discriminatory language combined with physical assault could constitute federal charges under civil rights statutes. Eleanor looked around the ballroom desperately, at the socialites who had cheered her assault of a maid and were now backing away like she had a contagious disease, at the live stream cameras broadcasting her complete destruction to over 150,000 viewers, at her board members calculating the cost of defying David Washington versus the cost of surrender, at Jasmine, standing in her torn uniform with the quiet dignity of someone who had just destroyed a billion-dollar company with nothing but strategic patience and moral authority. Eleanor's voice broke completely. I need to speak with my attorneys and my board. Oh God, what have I done? You revealed your true character, Jasmine said simply, in front of 150,000 witnesses. The question now is whether you're capable of accepting responsibility for your choices. Sergeant Martinez looked at Eleanor expectantly. Ma'am, what would you like us to do? Do you want to pursue charges against Dr. Washington? Or should we take your statement about being assaulted? The police radios crackled with another emergency call. Detective Carter spoke into his radio, then looked at both women. Ladies, we have other emergencies to respond to. Do you need us to file reports tonight, or can this be resolved privately? Because frankly, this looks like a civil matter that's already being resolved in real time. David's voice was final. You have until the officers leave, Eleanor. After that, the offer expires, and we proceed with full legal and financial consequences. No negotiations, no extensions, no mercy. The question hung in the air like a loaded gun pointed at Eleanor's entire life, her company, her fortune, her reputation, her freedom. Everything depended on her next words. 10:20 p.m. 10 minutes until VIP presentations. Eleanor Vance stood in the center of her own ballroom, surrounded by the wreckage of her reputation and the stunned faces of Beverly Hills elite. The silence stretched like a taut wire, broken only by the soft buzz of 153,000 people watching her downfall in real time. Her attorney whispered frantically in her ear, but Eleanor wasn't listening anymore. She was staring at Jasmine Washington. Dr. Jasmine Washington, standing in her torn uniform, with the quiet dignity of someone who had just dismantled an empire with nothing but patience and moral authority. Eleanor's voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. I accept your terms. The words fell into the ballroom like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock and relief that spread through the crowd. All of them? David's voice pressed through the phone speaker. Eleanor nodded, then realized he couldn't see her. Yes, all of them. I accept full responsibility for my actions tonight. Sergeant Martinez exchanged glances with Detective Carter. Ma'am, are you dropping the assault charges against Dr. Washington? Yes. Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. There were no assault charges. I was the one who committed assault. Dr. Washington was the victim. Jasmine stepped forward, her composure never wavering despite the torn fabric hanging from her shoulder. Mrs. Vance, I need you to be very clear about what happened tonight, for the record and for all the people watching. Eleanor looked at the phones still recording, at the live stream that had broadcast her moral failure to over 150,000 viewers. Her hands shook as she smoothed down her wine-stained Chanel. I physically assaulted you, Eleanor said, each word seeming to cost her something. Twice. I tore your clothing, pushed you down, and called you names based on your perceived economic status and race. I did this because I thought you were powerless to stop me. The confession hit the live stream like a bomb. Comments exploded across every platform. She admitted it, full confession on live stream, 153K witnesses to confession. And now, Jasmine prompted gently. Eleanor's shoulders sagged. Now I discover that you're Dr. Jasmine Washington, wife of David Washington, and that this was all a test of my character. She looked directly into the nearest camera. A test I failed completely. Jasmine nodded. The terms my husband outlined are non-negotiable. Do you understand that? I understand. Eleanor turned to address the crowd, her voice growing stronger as she found some semblance of resolve. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to apologize publicly for my behavior tonight. Dr. Washington was conducting a legitimate character assessment, and I responded with violence and discrimination. The police officers began packing up their equipment, satisfied that the situation was resolving itself without criminal charges. David's voice cut through the ballroom with corporate precision. Eleanor, the first transfer of $2 million to my wife needs to be initiated tonight. My legal team will provide the account information within the hour. Eleanor's CFO, who had been frantically working his phone, stepped forward. Mr. Washington, we can authorize the transfer immediately. Our board has been in emergency session for the past 15 minutes. And the $10 million donation? We'll need 72 hours to liquidate assets, but it will be completed. Jasmine addressed Eleanor directly. The character training for your executives will be conducted by the Washington Institute. We'll be implementing comprehensive monitoring to ensure lasting change. Eleanor nodded numbly. Whatever you require. And your resignation from daily operations. Eleanor looked around the ballroom at the faces of people who had been her friends, her supporters, her social circle. Now they looked at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. Effective immediately, she said quietly. The board can select interim leadership while we restructure. Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it and smiled slightly. Mrs. Vance, despite tonight's events, there is some good news. Eleanor looked up hopefully. Apex Global's investor network has been monitoring this situation. 3 companies have already expressed interest in acquiring Vance Enterprises' assets at fair market value, which would allow your employees to keep their jobs during the transition. Relief flooded Eleanor's face. My employees. I was so worried about what this would mean for them. Your workers shouldn't suffer for your moral failures, Jasmine said simply. That's why character matters in leadership. Detective Carter approached the 2 women. Ladies, it appears this situation is resolved. Dr. Washington, if you need to file any reports later, you have our contact information. Thank you, officers. I believe justice is being served through other channels. The police officers left, their departure marking the official end of the crisis. But the real work was just beginning. Jasmine turned to address the entire ballroom, her voice carrying despite the torn uniform. Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed tonight was a planned evaluation of character under pressure. Mrs. Vance's response revealed important truths about how power can corrupt moral judgment. The socialites who had laughed and recorded Eleanor's assault now looked ashamed, realizing they had participated in something ugly. However, Jasmine continued, Mrs. Vance's willingness to accept responsibility and make amends also reveals that redemption is possible when people choose accountability over denial. Eleanor looked up sharply, surprised by this note of compassion. The Vance Enterprises restructuring will become a model for how companies can recover from moral failures, Jasmine explained. Transparency, accountability, external oversight, and genuine commitment to change. David's voice added through the speaker. The Washington Institute will publish a case study of tonight's events, with Mrs. Vance's permission, to help other organizations implement character-based evaluation systems. Eleanor nodded slowly. If it helps prevent other people from making my mistakes, then yes. Use my failure as a teaching tool. Jasmine stepped closer to Eleanor, lowering her voice so only she could hear. Mrs. Vance, you have an opportunity now to become a better leader than you were before. Don't waste it. Eleanor met her eyes for the first time since the revelation. Dr. Washington, I thank you for giving me a chance to make this right. The livestream viewer count had peaked at 156,000, but Jasmine noticed something else in the comments. Mixed in with the outrage and shock were messages of hope. This is how accountability should work. Both women handled this with class. Vance can come back from this if she means it. Jasmine looked around the ballroom one final time, at the broken crystal being swept up by catering staff, at the socialites quietly discussing what they'd witnessed, at Eleanor Vance, humbled but not destroyed. "The character test is complete," she announced. "Now the real work begins." The VIP presentations would be canceled tonight, but something more important had been accomplished. A $1 billion lesson in character, broadcast live to the world. 18 months later, Jasmine Washington stood at the podium of the Stanford Graduate School of Business auditorium, looking out at 800 MBA students whose smartphones were recording every word. The same confidence that had sustained her through Eleanor Vance's assault now commanded the attention of future business leaders. "The most dangerous assumption in business," she began, "is that character doesn't matter as much as competence. Tonight, I want to share how that assumption cost one company $1 billion. The presentation screen displayed the now famous image, Jasmine in her torn catering uniform, standing with quiet dignity, while Eleanor Vance loomed over her in wine-stained Chanel. Below it, the caption read, "The $1 billion character test." "Dr. Washington," a student called out, "how did you know Mrs. Vance would fail the assessment?" Jasmine smiled. "I didn't. That was the point. We needed to see her authentic response when she believed no consequences existed for her behavior." The transformation that followed had become a case study taught in business schools worldwide. Vance Enterprises, under new leadership, had not only survived but thrived. The company's Vance Standard for ethical behavior had been adopted by over 2,000 corporations globally. Eleanor Vance herself sat in the third row, taking notes like any other student. After stepping down from daily operations, Eleanor had enrolled in Stanford's executive leadership program. The woman who had once torn a maid's uniform now spent her days learning about workplace dignity, unconscious bias, and moral leadership. "Mrs. Vance," Jasmine addressed her directly, "would you share what you've learned about character under pressure?" Eleanor stood, her designer clothes replaced by the simple business attire of a serious student. "I learned that who you are in private becomes who you are in public. I thought I could compartmentalize my prejudices, but they poisoned everything I touched." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Dr. Washington didn't destroy my company. She revealed that I had already destroyed it through 1,000 small moral failures that built up to one catastrophic moment." The auditorium was silent, riveted by the honesty. "The hardest lesson," Eleanor continued, "was accepting that I needed to change fundamentally, not just apologetically. It took months of therapy, education, and genuine accountability before I could even begin to earn back trust." Jasmine nodded. "Character failures rarely happen in isolation. They're usually the culmination of compromises we've been making for years." The statistics spoke for themselves. The Washington method of character assessment had uncovered moral failures in 23% of executive candidates before they reached leadership positions. Companies using the method reported 67% fewer discrimination lawsuits and 89% higher employee satisfaction scores. But the impact went far beyond corporate boardrooms. "Dr. Washington," another student asked, "how has your experience changed workplace protection laws?" The numbers were staggering. 47 states had passed character accountability legislation, requiring public accommodation businesses to maintain anti-discrimination policies with real enforcement mechanisms. The Vance Act mandated that companies above a certain size implement anonymous reporting systems and external oversight. "Most importantly," Jasmine explained, "we've shifted the conversation from protecting victims after harm occurs to preventing harm through character evaluation and accountability systems." The Washington Institute had processed over 50,000 character assessments, from Fortune 500 CEOs to local restaurant managers. The methodology was simple. Observe how people treat others when they believe no consequences exist for their behavior. The results had reshaped American business culture. But character testing isn't about entrapment, Jasmine clarified. It's about creating opportunities for people to demonstrate their values under pressure. Some fail, like Mrs. Vance initially did. Others reveal remarkable integrity when they think no one important is watching. Eleanor raised her hand. May I add something? Jasmine nodded. The most valuable lesson wasn't about my failure, Eleanor said. It was about Dr. Washington's response to that failure. She could have destroyed me completely. Instead, she offered accountability with redemption. That taught me more about leadership than any business school course ever did. The audience murmured appreciatively. The Eleanor Vance redemption story had become almost as famous as her initial downfall. Under the new leadership she'd helped select, Vance Enterprises had implemented revolutionary workplace policies. Employee profit sharing, mandatory dignity training, and a worker advocacy board with real authority had transformed the company culture. Most remarkably, the company's stock price had reached all-time highs. Investors had learned that ethical companies were simply more profitable long-term. Dr. Washington, a student in the back, called out, "What would you say to someone who thinks character testing is manipulative?" Jasmine considered the question carefully. I'd say that character isn't tested by manipulation. It's revealed by opportunity. Every day we have chances to treat people with dignity or dismiss them as unimportant. Most of the time, we make these choices unconsciously. She clicked to the next slide, showing global statistics. 47 countries had adopted character-based evaluation systems for public servants. Corporate discrimination incidents had decreased by 34% in regions using Washington method assessments. Character testing simply makes these choices conscious and consequential. The presentation concluded with a video montage. Eleanor apologizing to Jasmine, the two women working together on policy development, and Vance Enterprises' transformation into an industry leader for workplace dignity. But the final image was the most powerful. Jasmine and Eleanor, 18 months later, standing together at the signing of federal character accountability legislation. Change is possible, Jasmine said, looking directly at Eleanor, when people choose growth over defensiveness. Eleanor smiled back. And when others choose teaching over destruction. The auditorium erupted in applause, but Jasmine wasn't finished. Your homework, she announced, is to observe your own character choices this week. How do you treat servers, janitors, delivery drivers, people who can't affect your grade or your career prospects? She paused, meeting eyes throughout the auditorium. Because the person you are when no one important is watching is the person you really are, and that person will determine not just your success, but your legacy. As students filed out, many approached Eleanor with questions about her transformation. She answered each one patiently, her responses showing the depth of change that authentic accountability could create. Jasmine watched this interaction with satisfaction. The character test that had cost Vance Enterprises $1 billion had ultimately created something more valuable, a template for moral leadership that was reshaping corporate America. Your character is your most valuable asset and your greatest vulnerability. The Washington method isn't about perfection, it's about accountability, about choosing growth when confronted with failure, about building systems that reward dignity over power. If you've witnessed discrimination, document it. If you've failed character tests, own it. If you have power, use it to lift others up, not tear them down. Share this story if you believe character should be the foundation of leadership. Comment below, What's the most revealing character test you've witnessed or experienced? Subscribe to Black Legacy Stories for more accounts of moral courage creating lasting change. Remember, the most important moment in any leader's career isn't when they succeed. It's how they respond when their character is tested under pressure. They thought they were watching a maid get humiliated. They witnessed a masterclass in strategic moral courage that transformed an industry. Character is destiny.